Okay, last time we looked at the gross anatomy of compact bone and spongy bone, and we looked at the microscopic anatomy of compact bone. In this screencast, let's talk about the different types of cells that we find in bony tissue and the formation of bone. So when we look at bone, we are going to see four main kinds of cells. Our osteoprogenitor cells, osteoblasts, which we've mentioned before, osteocytes, and osteoclasts are new to us. So remember when I told you that mesenchyme produced osteoblasts? Well, technically, mesenchyme produced these cells called osteoprogenitor cells. Osteoprogenitor cells are the precursors to osteoblasts. So this is the cells that are going to form from mesenchyme, and then they differentiate, mature into the osteoblasts. And it's the osteoblasts that are actually going to secrete the bone, form the bony matrix. So here are osteoprogenitor cells derived from mesenchyme. They are going to mature to become an osteoblast, and we find these cells in the periosteum surrounding bone and the endosteum lining the surfaces inside the bone. Our osteoblasts come from those progenitor cells, and they are going to secrete the bony matrix. We're going to call this bony matrix osteoid, and we'll look at osteoid here in a moment, but that is the organic living part of the bony matrix. The osteoblasts then become trapped within the matrix they are secreting, and that causes them to mature and differentiate, and they become the osteocytes. So these are the osteocytes that we have seen located inside the lacuna. So the lacuna are the spaces that surround the osteoblasts when they get trapped in the matrix, and then those cells mature into the osteocytes. The osteocytes are going to help maintain the health of the bone. They're going to detect, they're going to detect the stress on the bone, and depending on what they detect and the feedback mechanisms, they may trigger formation of new bone. So coming back to this, here are our osteocytes, and the osteocytes are going to have some of these dendritic cytoplasmic extensions. Here's another type of cell, osteoclasts. The only difference in spelling here is the B becomes a C. Osteoclasts are almost the opposite of osteoblasts. Where osteoblasts secrete matrix, osteoclasts break it down. So these cells are phagocytic cells. They come from the bone marrow, and they are going to be involved in what we call bone resorption. And we're going to see that bone resorption is part of several different important processes. It's involved in the process of forming the correct shape of the bone. If there's damage to the bone, it's going to reabsorb the damaged components so that new bone material, bone matrix, can be laid down, and then again it has to be reshaped. So bone resorption plays an important role in the shape and strength of the bone. Also, bone resorption is going to play a role in releasing the stored minerals from inside the bone. So we'll see that these osteoclasts have a shape that once again increases their surface area to expose bone. So if they're going to have an increased surface area, what would you expect their shape to be? Let's take a look. So here are our osteoclasts, and the osteoblasts are going to be kind of a ruffly shaped bone that increases the surface area. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Okay, so this cell is going to have this ruffly shape, which has these processes, the surface area with which that cell can contact the bone. Well, where do we find these different cells in bony tissue? So here is a trabecula of spongy bone, and we can see that that trabeculum is lined with the endosteum membrane. So the endosteum would be lining all of these surfaces here. And in the trabeculum, we find that we have osteocytes in lacuna, just like we have in compact bone. But where we find the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts are actually inside this membrane, the endosteum. So the blast and clast cells are in the membranes, whereas the osteocytes are located in the lacuna. Let's look at the components of bone tissue. So bone matrix is going to have an organic component and an inorganic component. That organic component, as I mentioned before, is the osteoid. And the osteoid is secreted by osteoblasts. Osteoid contains collagen proteins, and it contains the ground substance. The ground substance seems weird, but it's just a semi-solid ground substance that's secreted by the osteoblasts. This is not what makes the bone hard. It contains some molecules of proteoglycans and some glycoproteins, and you don't need to know the specific ones that it contains at this time. The osteoid is what makes the bone strong, and it resists stretching, and it's flexible. Does this seem weird to you that bones are flexible? The bone is so flexible that you can put incredible pressure on it, and it's not going to snap initially in healthy bone. The inorganic components are what make the bone hard. So organic make the bone resilient, stretchable, resist compression, but the inorganic components make the bone hard. The inorganic components are going to be added into the osteoid. So what are we adding in? We're going to add in some crystals of calcium phosphate, and that is going to form hypoxyapatite when it interacts with calcium hydroxide. So calcium phosphate interacts with calcium hydroxide. Here's what I want you to know. That forms this substance called hydroxyapatite. And it's the hydroxyapatite that is going to harden the bony matrix and make them very, very rigid. Now, there's other substances that can also be incorporated into the bones. So we can incorporate calcium carbonate, sodium, magnesium, and sulfate, as well as fluoride. Bone formation is going to start with osteoblasts secreting osteoid, and then calcification occurs, and we have these hydroxyapatite crystals forming and depositing inside the osteoid. So the calcium and the phosphate ions are going to come out, and they're going to form crystals, and we're going to see how that calcium can be released here in just a moment when we need it. This process requires vitamin D. Vitamin D is going to help your gut, your gastrointestinal tract, absorb the calcium that it needs. And this is why a lot of times milk is fortified with vitamin D, and it has calcium in it. You also need vitamin C for the formation of bone, because vitamin C is part of the process of forming collagen. People who don't get enough vitamin C can have a disease called rickets, and their bones don't get hard. Their bones are soft and bendy. Back in the days where, before this was known, the sailors in the old sailing ships would be on the seas for long periods of time without any source of vitamin C, and they would get scurvy, and their legs would bend. And then, of course, if we need calcification, we've got to supply that calcium and supply the phosphate. We've talked about bone resorption, the opposite of bone deposition or bone formation. And bone resorption occurs through the activity of those osteoclasts. So those osteoclasts are going to release some proteolytic enzymes that are contained within the osteoclasts, and those enzymes digest away the organic matrix components of bone. The calcium and the phosphate are going to be dissolved not by these enzymes, but by hydrochloric acid. And then those calcium and phosphate ions are free to enter the blood and be used elsewhere. Guys, we are going to talk about the role of calcium over and over again. And it is critical that we have sufficient concentrations of calcium in our blood to support nerve function, to support muscle cell function, as well as all the other cell types, but particularly the electrically active cells. And if we don't have enough calcium available already in our blood, this is where it comes from. It comes from this bone resorption. So if blood calcium levels are low, then we're going to go get that calcium from where it's stored in our bones. About cartilaginous formation or growth. Cartilage is similar but a little bit different. It's cartilage that forms the fetal skeleton. So this cartilaginous growth is going to start during embryological development. We've got two different kinds of cartilaginous growth. We have interstitial growth and appositional. Interstitial growth is growth from within, right? Growth from within. It occurs on the inside of existing cartilage. Appositional growth is growth from without, on the outside, and so that's going to occur on the outside edge of existing cartilage. The net effect is that interstitial growth is going to cause the cartilage to grow in length, whereas appositional growth is going to cause more growth in width. So taking a look here, let me make this big. We're going to start with interstitial growth. Here is our chondrocyte. The chondrocyte is located in a lacuna in existing cartilage. And this is a living cell. It can undergo mitosis. And when it undergoes mitosis, now we have two cells. It divides into two. And these cells are going to become chondroblasts. And the chondroblast is now going to make the new matrix. So each cell, each of the new chondroblasts is going to secrete the new cartilaginous matrix, and then they begin to pull apart from each other, and they continue to secrete this matrix around themselves. So we're secreting cartilaginous matrix inside existing cartilage. That is interstitial growth. Secretion of new cartilage against the outside of existing cartilage is appositional growth. Here we have mitotic activity in the stem cells in the perichondrium. So remember that our osteoblasts were located inside the periosteum. Well, we also have chondroblasts inside the perichondrium. And so these are going to, again, undergo mitosis and divide. And then these stem cells, undifferentiated cells, are going to start secreting the new cartilaginous matrix. But because this is in the perichondrium, the new matrix is added to the outside edge of the older existing cartilage. And so as a result, of the new cartilage forming, these cells are going to separate, and they'll continue to secrete new cartilage, but then they become independent of each other.